the ever-challenging realm of law enforcement, many good men and women of the uniform put themselves in harm's way to ensure you and I enjoy our lives and freedom. However, some cops went all out to take the lives of others. In this compelling video, we'll discuss some of these people, their startling crimes, and the relentless pursuit of justice that followed. Without further ado, here are 11 corrupt cops who killed everyone in court. John Camfield. The law says, don't drink and drive. And when people like John Camfield drink and drive, even killing someone in the process, it reflects just how reckless some people can be, despite being trained within the ranks of law enforcement. April 28, 2017, seemed much like any other day. 5 middle school students, including 13-year-old Jahiam Robertson from Polk County, walked on the road. Returning from school, these vibrant, innocent young souls only wanted to get home from their bus stop in Poinciana and be with the loved ones they'd left earlier that day. Moments later, a car driving off the road ran into the school children, killing young Robertson and injuring the other 4 before speeding off from the scene. The car's driver, later found to be under the influence of alcohol, was former Mississippi law enforcement officer Camfield. Following the incident, Polk County deputies arrested the former officer on 11 charges. Medical examination revealed Camfield's blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit to drive when he hit the 5 Dundee Ridge Middle Academy students. An eyewitness described seeing Camfield leaning forward in the vehicle before driving off the road and hitting the students. According to investigators, he first struck 15-year-old Jonte Robinson before colliding with 14-year-old Jasmine Robertson. Next, he recklessly struck 12-year-old Rylan Price and subsequently 13-year-old Jahiam Robertson and 13-year-old Juan Mina. Robinson, Jasmine, and Price all sustained minor injuries and received treatment at the scene, while Mina suffered multiple broken bones in his face, leaving him hospitalized. Robertson died at the hospital after medics pronounced him brain dead and took him off life support on April 30, 2017. During his May 2018 trial before Judge Wayne Durden, the ex-officer said he doesn't recall the accident at all, blaming it on his health issues and claiming he had not been drinking at all that day. However, Polk County Sheriff's Office records show his blood alcohol level was 0.147, nearly double the legal limit of 0.08. Seeing the odds stacked against him, Camfield pleaded no contest to driving under the influence manslaughter and related charges in February 2018. Meaning he neither admitted nor denied the allegations against him, which is essentially an acknowledgement of guilt. For those unaware of the legal implications of a no-contest plea, such carries the same weight as a guilty plea. Following a guilty verdict, Judge Durden on Thursday, May 30, 2018, sentenced him to 30 years in prison for DUI manslaughter and another consecutive 5-year sentence for DUI with serious bodily injury. The sentencing also includes permanently revoking his driver's license and an extra 4 years of probation. Perhaps the most touching moment of Camfield's trial was when the victim's mom, Robin Robertson, tearfully confronted Camfield, blaming him for her son's death. "You left my son like an animal on the side of the road. He was in his school clothes and didn't even come home for dinner that night," she said. "Like I always waited for him and he never came home." Interestingly, Polk Sheriff Grady Judd revealed Camfield, who worked for 10 law enforcement agencies from 1994 to 2012 in Mississippi, was one of the best detectives. However, he had a problem with alcohol and reportedly affirmed having a relationship with Captain Morgan, a rum brand. Wayne Couzens. An officer working for the London Metropolitan Police, Wayne Couzens seemed like another policeman charged with maintaining the law and protecting public safety. However, as you'd see, this man harbored a dark personality capable of committing unthinkable deeds. On March 3, 2021, around 9 p.m., 33-year-old marketing expert Sarah Everard unexpectedly vanished while walking home from a friend's house in Clapham, London. Following investigations to unravel what could have happened to her, police arrested Couzens at his deal, Kent Home, just 6 days after the disappearance. As you'd imagine, the officer's arrest shocked many who couldn't imagine a police officer had a hand in the crime. As facts from the investigations revealed, Couzens, then off duty, and under the pretense that Miss Everard violated the COVID-19 lockdown guidelines, kidnapped her using a warrant card from the Metropolitan Police. He later proceeded to rape her before killing and burning her body, which officers later found in the woods near Ashford, Kent. On March 10th, the day police discovered Everard's remains, they arrested Couzens on suspicion of murder and charged him with kidnapping and murder, following authorization from the Crown Prosecution Service. Later, on March 13th, he appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court to answer for the charges. During his trial, the prosecution recounted the horrific details of his involvement in the murder in a manner that shocked everyone. Eyewitnesses further testified, seeing him detain a lady on the sidewalk. On June 8th, Couzens pleaded guilty to kidnapping and rape and later entered a guilty plea for murder on July 9th. Prior and after his plea hearing, several people people affirmed being surprised he could commit such acts. In one interview, Elena Cousins, his wife, stated being as puzzled as everyone else as to what led her husband into committing the crimes. "He didn't appear to be acting strangely. I didn't notice anything was wrong," she said. One senior investigator on the case, former DCI Simon Harding, described him as a very sick and very dangerous individual who should never have been near a uniform. Following a sentencing hearing before Lord Justice Fulford of the Central Criminal Court of England, the officer received a life sentence with a lifetime revocation order on September 30th, 2021. As you can tell, Cousins, like a common criminal, harbored the strangest malice in his heart. Even worse, this officer, who was supposed to protect citizens and enforce the law and justice, had become a lawbreaker who brutally violated others. The horrifying details of his crime shocked many within and outside the UK and sparked debates about women's safety and trust in police nationwide. More so, the crime revealed systemic flaws and corruption plaguing the Metropolitan Police. As later revealed by a non-statutory inquiry, Cousins worked as an officer for 3 separate forces despite having a questionable character. He'd faced multiple misconduct complaints during his tenure as an officer, raising questions about why he was allowed to continue serving despite the glaring red flags. Sure to say, Wayne Cousins' case affected public trust in the police force, his betrayal of public trust further straining the already existing fragile relationship between law enforcement and the community they swore to protect. Eric DeValcaneri.
As to count 1, in which defendant is charged with the Class C felony of involuntary manslaughter in the first degree, the court finds the defendant guilty.
These were Jackson County Circuit Court Judge J. Dale Youngs's words when he announced guilty verdicts for 43-year-old white officer Eric DeValcaneri, charged with first-degree involuntary manslaughter and armed criminal action in the December 3, 2019, shooting of 26-year-old black man Cameron Lamb. According to DeValcaneri's indictment, the former Kansas City police officer and his partner responded to a traffic incident involving a red pickup truck in Kansas City on the day of the shooting. A police helicopter observed the red pickup truck driving and entering a driveway at the back of a home. The officers, dressed in plain clothes while wearing police department vests, subsequently arrived at the property and entered the backyard without a legal warrant, drawing their guns. At that moment, Lamb was slowly reversing the pickup truck down a ramp into the basement garage. With DeValcaneri's partner on Lamb's side of the vehicle, the officer could see the black man when he arrived. The officers attempted to instruct Lamb to stop, but it remains uncertain whether he heard their commands. DeValcaneri discharged his firearm 4 times at Lamb. 2 bullets struck the man, killing him instantly. The officer later claimed he saw the black man's left hand reaching for a gun and pointing it at his partner, Sergeant Troy Schwalm. While on the witness stand during his trial, he recounted the incident, saying, "I remember thinking, no, this can't happen, I can't let this happen." Asked by defense attorney Molly Hastings whether he meant that he couldn't let Lamb shoot his partner, DeValcaneri replied, "Right," before dabbing tears from his eyes using a Kleenex. However, Officer Schwalm testified that Lamb had his left hand on the steering wheel with his fingers spread apart. Also, he held up his left hand with no gun in it at the time DeValcaneri shot him. Furthermore, the indictment revealed Lamb was right-handed, with medical records indicating he didn't have full use of his left hand due to an injury before the shooting, meaning he couldn't have posed any danger to the officers at the time one of them gruesomely gunned him down. Judge Youngs, who presided over DeValcaneri's bench trial, found him guilty of first-degree involuntary manslaughter and armed criminal action charges in November 2021. The judge ruled that the ex-officer wasn't acting in lawful self-defense or the defense of Sergeant Schwalm when he shot and killed the victim. Also, he didn't lawfully utilize deadly force as a law enforcement officer and violated Lamb's constitutional rights by entering the property where the incident occurred without the legal right to be there. On Friday, March 4, 2022, Youngs sentenced DeValcaneri to 3 years for involuntary manslaughter and 6 years for armed criminal actions, stating he'll serve both sentences concurrently. Currently incarcerated, DeValcaneri's attorney, General Andrew Bailey, seeks a verdict reversal or a new trial following an appeal at the Missouri Court of Appeals for the Western District of Missouri. Roy Oliver. If you're a police officer, the last thing you'd want is to make a mistake that'd land you in the kind of trouble former officer Roy Oliver of the Balch Springs Police Department found himself in when he shot and killed 14-year-old Jordan Edwards. That day, when Oliver committed the horrific act, Edwards' parents and friends never imagined they'd never see him again alive. To understand how the incident occurred, let's go back to around 11 p.m. on April 29, 2017. Oliver, alongside several other police officers, was responding to a 911 call about reporting several underage kids drinking at a house party of around 100 people when they allegedly heard gunshots, which caused panic. leading to partygoers fleeing in several directions. Officer Oliver, making a disastrous decision, fired 3 shots from his modern carbine MC5 rifle into a car, hitting Edwards in the head and tragically ending his life. At the time of the incident, Edwards wasn't alone in the car. Also in the car were 2 of his brothers and 2 friends with him, with his 16-year-old brother driving the vehicle. Although people tried to save him, medics pronounced Edwards dead upon arriving at a local hospital. Following the incident, police originally released a false statement about how the events played out. The statement suggested the car the teens were in was racing towards the officers when Oliver fired the shots. However, reviewing footage from body cameras worn by the officer and his colleagues, Police Chief Jonathan Haber later renounced the statement and admitted that the vehicle was not moving toward the officers but away from them. As a result of the shooting, the Balch Springs Police Department first placed Oliver on administrative leave before firing him from his job on May 2, 2017. 3 days later, the authorities charged him with murder, leading to a warrant for his arrest. During his trial, rescheduled several times, Oliver told the jury he fired the shots out of fear that his partner's life was in danger. Alongside footage from the incident contradicting his story, that officer testified he never feared for his life. The prosecution, arguing against Oliver, stated that the teen's vehicle posed no immediate danger when leaving the scene. The jury, seeing through the inconsistencies in his testimony and the glaring contradictions between his account and footage from the incident, handed Oliver a guilty verdict on August 28, 2018, with Oliver facing a possible life sentence for his crimes, as requested by District Attorney Faith Johnson. Several friends, colleagues, and family members, including his mother, pleaded for a shorter sentencing, describing him as a good person and father. The following day, August 29th, a judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison with an order to pay a $10,000 fine. Although the ex-cop's legal team announced they'd appeal both the verdict and the sentence, Texas's Fifth Court of Appeals rejected his appeal on August 10, 2020, while upholding the murder conviction and sentence. When you do the crime, you have to do the time, right? Well, the justice system ensured Oliver answered for his deeds, delivering a solid message to officers not to misuse their powers under no circumstances. John Bauman. Perhaps only a few people on our list rank up to the level of malice that defines former Homewood police officer John Earl Bauman. This man, an alleged serial killer, twice escaped conviction for killing a friend and his first wife before being sentenced to death for murdering his second wife. A heavy-set man who always wore thick-rimmed glasses, earning him the nickname Bottles, Bauman was a highly controlling man who loved to bully people and always wanted things his way. Although he didn't seem like the type that could commit an atrocious crime like murder due to his job as an enforcer of the law, Baum's life soon took a sinister turn, revealing a deeply troubling side to his person and character. It all began on July 26, 1970. Sergeant Dean Pence, a Flossmoor police officer and longtime friend of Baum, was found dead near the Prestwick Country Club in Will County. Baum allegedly shot Pence with a .38 caliber revolver for having a suspected affair with his wife, Trudy. Despite being the lead suspect in the murder case, the grand jury in Will County refused to indict him, allowing him to walk free of all charges. Several years later, in 1984, Bauman would again be in the news for killing Trudy while both couples inspected some camping equipment in their garage in Madison. According to his account of her death, Trudy died after accidentally setting herself on fire. However, an autopsy revealed someone strangled the woman before burning her body. Following a trial for Trudy's death in 1985, a Cook County judge acquitted Bauman of murder, leaving him free again from another murder charge. Many cited court irregularities in the case, and in 1988, a federal court convicted his attorney, Fred Aprati, of paying bribes to Cook County Sheriff's Police, which aided Bauman's acquittal. Well, things don't last forever, right? The former officer's luck ended following the murder of his second wife, Valerie. In 1995, the couple went on vacation to St. John's in Antigua and Barbuda and checked into the Royal Antiguan Hotel. On May 27th that year, Bauman took his wife to the rooftop of the 8-story hotel, where he forcibly pushed her to her death. Following the murder, the authorities arrested and incarcerated Bauman at Her Majesty's Prison without the possibility of bail. Throughout the investigation, he explained his wife accidentally fell while they exchanged love letters. Nevertheless, a coroner, contradicting his account, said she'd met her demise through deliberate pushing. During Bauman's trial, the hotel employees testified he initially reserved a double occupancy room for the first 3 nights, but subsequently changed it to a single occupancy room for the remainder of their stay. Despite the former officer expressing a deep love for his wife, such sentiment failed to sway the jury jury, who unanimously handed him a guilty verdict for murder. Bauman subsequently received a death sentence for his crime. As officers escorted him out of the courtroom, the local Antiguan community cursed him and cheered for his eventual death. Although his lawyer, Gerald Watt, alleging a courtroom bias in favor of the prosecutor, later appealed the verdict, the appeal was rejected. Shortly after, on May 31, 2000, Bauman killed himself in an Antiguan jail by hanging himself using a bedsheet affixed to his cell window bars. Joseph James DeAngelo. In the grim annals of American law enforcement, one man, Joseph James DeAngelo, a convicted former police officer, historically stands out not for upholding the law, but for heinous crimes that would shock the nation. DeAngelo, also known as the Golden State Killer, was a serial rapist and murderer responsible for a reign of terror that spanned decades. Born November 8, 1945, in Bath, New York, DeAngelo's criminal activities began in the 1970s when he served as a police officer in various California jurisdictions, including Exeter and Auburn. Having committed at least 13 murders, 51 rapes, and 120 burglaries across California between 1974 and 1986, this man used his knowledge of police procedures and investigative techniques to evade capture while committing a spree of violent crimes. DeAngelo's method of operation included breaking into homes, kidnapping and sexually assaulting women, and murdering many of his victims through brutal means like shooting and bludgeoning. Perhaps one of the most unsettling things about his crimes was that they were marked by a chilling level of brutality and premeditation. He'd often stalk his victims, learning their routines and vulnerabilities before moving to strike. His ability to strike fear into many people's hearts and elude authorities for over a decade earned him several monikers, including the Golden State Killer, the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, and the Night Stalker. For so long, DeAngelo's identity as the man behind these notorious titles remained hidden, making his story somewhat like the stuff of legend. It wasn't until the evening of April 24, 2018, over 40 years after his first known crime, that Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies finally apprehended 73-year-old DeAngelo for his crimes. Advances in forensic technology, mainly using genealogy databases to identify potential suspects and DNA evidence linking the ex-officer to a series of crimes, played a pivotal role in cracking the case. Following his arrest, things didn't seem promising for justice to prevail after the authorities couldn't charge DeAngelo with the rapes and burglaries he'd committed in the 1970s due to California's statute of limitations on pre-2017 rape cases. Nevertheless, they charged him in August 2018 with 13 counts of kidnapping and murder, respectively. Joseph DeAngelo's trial was a momentous event that garnered national attention. The once elusive predator was now in the spotlight, facing charges for multiple counts of murder and sexual assault. His victims, including many who lived in fear for decades, finally had the chance to see their tormentor brought to justice. During the trial, survivors and family members of the victims shared their harrowing stories, shedding light on the enduring trauma inflicted by DeAngelo's actions. The prosecution, announcing they would seek the death penalty, presented a compelling case that showcased the mountain of evidence against him. On June 29, 2020, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to all charges leveled against him as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. Later, on August 21st that year, he received multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, although he once offered a brief apology for his actions, saying, "I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt." His remorseful words could never fully alleviate the profound pain and suffering he had inflicted upon his victims and their families. Per public jail records, the former officer-turned-convict currently serves time at California State Prison Corcoran. Drew Peterson. Suppose you think those sworn to protect you have no evil under their sleeves. Think again. As you'd see, the story of Drew Peterson, a former Bolingbrook police sergeant who gruesomely murdered his third wife and thrice threatened the second with a gun, will leave you questioning the very foundations of trust in law enforcement. Born January 5, 1954, Peterson joined the police in 1977, rising to become a sergeant in the Bolingbrook Police Department in Illinois. Having an imposing build and authoritative demeanor, he earned the respect and recognition of his peers, having once received a Police Officer of the Year award from the department in 1979. However, Peterson, a perfect example of all that glitter isn't gold, wasn't the good cop many thought him to be. The ex-officer, who married 4 times, had a troubling personal life that led him to commit several atrocious acts. His first and second marriages to Carol Brown and Victoria Vicky Connolly ended in divorce after they discovered he was having affairs with other women. After marrying Kathleen Savio, it seemed he'd settled down once and for all. However, his marriage to Savio also ended in a divorce on October 10, 2003. The following year, on March 1, 2004, Savio's unclad body was found in a waterless bathtub in the main suite of her home on Pheasant Chase Drive, Bolingbrook, Illinois. While Kathleen Savio's death in 2004 initially went under the radar, it was the October 2007 mysterious disappearance of Peterson's fourth wife, Stacey Ann Peterson, that thrust the case back into the spotlight. You see, after Stacey vanished, the authorities launched a series of investigations that led to them exhuming Kathleen's body and reclassifying her death as a homicide. As the investigations revealed, her death was no accident but a result of a murder. Autopsy results determined she had died from drowning after a struggle. Additionally, she had odd bruises on her body and a large gash on her head. As the case against Peterson grew stronger, a Will County grand jury indicted him for Kathleen's murder on May 7, 2009, leading to his arrest the same day. During his murder trial, Peterson displayed arrogance and nearly no remorse for his crime and made several outbursts, including vehemently screaming his innocence. His outbursts, witnessed by many, led state prosecutor James Glasgow to describe him as a psychopath. On September 6, 2012, jurors convicted the ex-officer for the premeditated murder of Kathleen before receiving a 38-year sentence on February 21, 2013. Whereas incarceration marks the end of the road for many criminals, serving time at the Peterson-Menard Correctional Center in Chester, Illinois, didn't end his journey in crime. On February 9, 2015, law enforcement charged him with attempting to put a hit on James Glasgow, the Chicago area lead attorney who prosecuted him. Antonio Smith, a fellow inmate Peterson asked to arrange the hit, alerted the authorities about the sinister plan and assisted them in getting enough evidence against him. Found guilty in May 2016, he received an additional 40-year sentence in addition to his already extensive prison term. Although prosecutors suspect Peterson murdered his fourth wife because she might have incriminated him in Kathleen's death, the man maintains she is still alive and only chose to leave him for another man. Robert Fratta. About 30 years before the incident leading to Robert Fratta's death on January 11, 2023, occurred, the former suburban Houston police officer would never have guessed he would leave this world in the spine-chilling manner he did that fateful day. Fratta, 62 years old and serving time under the death penalty, received a lethal injection at the state penitentiary in Huntsville. He was pronounced dead at 7:49 p.m., 24 minutes after a lethal pentobarbital dose began flowing into his arms. But what did the former officer do to warrant such a terrible fate or earn him a place on our list? Well, his story is yet another in a long list of corrupt cops killing their wives. In January 1994, Fratta hired two men to murder his 33-year-old wife, Farah. According to available information, the couple, undergoing a divorce battle, were locked in a legal battle for custody of their 3 children. The ex-cop, not wanting Farah to have custody of the kids, planned to kill her. Subsequently, he hired Joseph Prystash, who also hired a gunman, Howard Guidry, who shot Farah twice in the head at the family home in Atascocita, Houston. 5 months after the murder, investigations pointed towards Fratta as the primary culprit, prompting his arrest and questioning. Later, he stood trial for his crime. During trial, witnesses said the convicted former cop told friends about his plans several days before the crime, even seeking advice on potential hitmen. Of his plans, the man had allegedly said, "I'll just kill her, and I'll do my time, and when I get out, I'll have my kids." Multiple recorded phone calls helped build a case against Fratta, including one of Guidry's jail calls where he said Fratta provided the gun used for the hit. In 1996, the ex-officer received a guilty verdict and a death sentence. During the initial ruling, the federal judge involved in the case condemned Fratta for his alleged actions, describing him as egotistical, misogynistic, and vile, with a callous desire to kill his wife. On the day of his execution, Fratta refused to speak to his son Bradley Baxter, who witnessed his execution alongside Farah's brother Zane Backer. More so, he'd maintained he was innocent up to the point of death, never saying sorry for his crime. Andy Cahan, the director of Victim Services and Advocacy for Crime Stoppers of Houston, described him as a coward, saying, when he was offered an opportunity to at least extend an olive branch to his son that he knew was watching this, and he still chose the coward's way out. He could have said, "I'm sorry." Derek Michael Chauvin. When former officer Derek Michael Chauvin killed 46-year-old George Floyd on May 25, 2020, it meant yet another tragic incident in the long list of murders associated with U.S. police officers in the line of duty. However, what made this particular incident very disturbing was the spine-chilling manner in which it occurred. Before the May 25th incident, Chauvin, a Minneapolis Police Department officer, had racked up at least 22 complaints on his official record, 2 of which had ended in discipline. Many accused the officer of using extreme force, with some describing him as someone who loved being unnecessarily aggressive. With little to nothing done to check his excesses, the officer continued wielding his power without restraint until his actions led to a grave incident that exposed his pattern of abuse and misconduct. Around 8 p.m. on the day he murdered Floyd Chauvin, alongside fellow officers T.U. Tao, Alexander Quing, and Thomas Kiernan Lane, reportedly responded to a call from a store clerk who said Floyd had paid for cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. Although Floyd never resisted arrest after the officers arrived, they still unduly treated him harshly despite having him handcuffed. Video footage shows the officers tried forcing him to sit in their squad car's back seat before later pinning him face down to the ground. At the time, Chauvin knelt on the man's neck while Quing knelt on his upper legs, holding his wrist. Meanwhile, Lane held his legs, preventing him from making any movement. Feeling extreme anxiety and discomfort due to their chokehold, Floyd repeatedly said he couldn't breathe and, fearing his imminent death, uttered the words "Mama" and "Please" in a bid to get the officers to let him breathe. Neglecting his pleas, Chauvin kept his knee on Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes. During the final 2, the man lay motionless, uttering no words and having no pulse. You see, even after bystanders who recorded the incident on their cell phones shouted at the officers to attend to him, they showed little concern and continued holding him down despite Quing confirming he couldn't feel Floyd's pulse after checking during the 6th minute. Later that night, medics pronounced Floyd dead. Following the killing, protests erupted in Minneapolis, spreading across the U.S. and various cities worldwide. On May 29th, Chauvin and the other 3 officers were arrested, having previously been fired from their jobs on May 27th. Now, focusing on Chauvin, the authorities first charged him with a count of third-degree murder, later increasing his charges to include 1 count of second-degree manslaughter and 1 count of unintentional second-degree murder. On March 8th, 2021, he stood trial before a jury in the Minnesota 4th Judicial District Court, and on April 20th was convicted of the charges. On June 25th, he received a 22.5-year prison sentence. Later, in December 2021, the former officer pleaded guilty to 2 federal charges of civil rights violations, one for using unreasonable force on Floyd and ignoring his serious medical needs, and the other for using unreasonable force on a 14-year-old boy in 2017. Subsequently, he was sentenced to 21 years in prison on July 7, 2022. Currently incarcerated at the Federal Correctional Institute in Tucson, Arizona, Chauvin will likely be released in 2038 when he's 62. Michael Jerome Corbett. When news about 60-year-old Michael Jerome Corbett's 2004 death from lung cancer spread across the media, many didn't remember him as a good man, but a dangerous criminal who used his office to commit heinous crimes. A 3-time convicted felon, the former Willow Springs police chief served a sentence for participating in the highly publicized 1982 murder of Diane Masters, the wife of a mob attorney. Before his arrest for murder, Corbett, with his assertive demeanor and sharp gaze, seemed like the typical police chief you could instinctively trust. Growing up, Corbett had a taste of poverty, which forced him to begin shoplifting to meet some of his needs. By age 14, he associated with an Italian-American street gang and was already rubbing shoulders with the town's notorious mobsters. These early connections paved the way for a life swinging between crime and the very institutions meant to combat it. You see, Corbett joined the police after Chicago mob outfit boss Sam Giancana offered him a position as a police officer in Willow Springs, Illinois. The job, however, came with a condition. "But just remember, kid, don't forget who your friends are," were the words Giancana told him after he accepted the position. Afterward, notorious political boss Doc Rust swore him into the Willow Springs Police Department. As you can see, Corbett became an officer due to help from the wrong people, and throughout his years in law enforcement, he did everything possible to please them. After Chicago resident Diane Masters vanished on March 19, 1982, her disappearance became a complex puzzle for police to crack. However, following a relentless investigation, they recovered her body from the trunk of her car 9 months later after discovering the vehicle submerged in a canal near Willow Springs. For years, the perpetrators, Corbett and Diane's husband, Alan Masters, evaded justice using their power and connection. Nevertheless, after the authorities arrested, charged, and convicted Corbett for 3 counts of extortion and racketeering, it marked the beginning of his legal troubles. In a shocking turn of events, Corbett, alongside Alan, an attorney with ties to the Chicago Mafia, found himself at the center of a highly publicized murder case involving Diane Diane's death. The investigation pointed to a sinister plot to murder her. In 1981, after Masters discovered his wife was having an affair, their relationship turned sour, leading to Diane filing for divorce the following year. With no love remaining between the couple, Allen decided to kill her. With the help of Corbett and James Keating, a lieutenant in the Cook County Sheriff's Police Department, he succeeded with his plan. Diane had been beaten, then shot before Corbett sank the car with her body inside in the canal. Corbett, who later confessed to his role in the heinous crime, received a 20-year sentence. However, behind the prison bars, Corbett defied the stereotype of a typical inmate. In 1993, after FBI agents visiting him in prison played for him, revealing mob associates threatening to kill not only Mr. Corbett, but also his young son Joey if he got in the way, the former officer became an invaluable assistant, helping the agents crack down on a mob-influenced union and prevent several potential crimes. Rewarding his cooperation with the FBI, U.S. authorities released him from prison 2 years early in 1998. Robert Olson. Robert Olson's journey from law enforcement officer to being found guilty of murder is a sobering example of how even those sworn to defend the masses may become tainted by power. The former Atlanta police officer initially gave the impression of being a committed and responsible officer who always acted professionally. However, a disturbing incident on March 9, 2015, revealed the true nature of the man underneath a fine uniform and led to his startling fall to the wrong side of the law. That day, Olson responded to 911 calls about a naked, unarmed guy allegedly acting erratic. The man, a former U.S. Air Force veteran named Anthony Hill, was reportedly going through a mental health crisis. Upon arriving at the scene, Olson said, Hill started running at him at full speed. Further recounting the incident, the ex-officer claimed that despite yelling twice for him to stop, the man continued running. Fearing for his life, he shot him twice, killing him. The incident rocked Atlanta, sparking discussions regarding the use of force by police. Subsequently, Olson faced charges of felony murder, aggravated assault, violating his oath of office, and making a false statement for actions resulting in Hill's death. Once in court, his case developed into a high-stakes legal thriller. Prosecutors from the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office presented evidence showing the defendant lied to the first responding officer at the incident scene by claiming the victim had physically attacked him, causing him to shoot in self-defense. The prosecution portrayed Olson as an officer who overstepped the mark, used excessive force, and disregarded the guidelines that govern his position. They further argued that the now convicted officer chose extreme violence when he pulled his gun and shot Hill to his death, rather than using de-escalation techniques and a professional approach to the problem. Despite substantial evidence from video footage and eyewitness testimonies proving otherwise, the defense claimed he had acted in self-defense. Throughout the entire hearing, Olson seemed very remorseful and cried intermittently during court proceedings, often wiping his eyes or wringing his hands. After a long, often contentious trial and deliberations, the jury acquitted Olson of felony murder, but handed down a guilty verdict on 4 other charges on October 14, 2019. Whereas the prosecution requested Olson serve 30 years, 25 years in custody, and another 5 years on probation for his crimes, his defense team sought no specific time. Instead, they cited how families tell officers to come home safe and asked Judge Jackson to please let him come home safe soon. On November 1, 2019, DeKalb County Superior Court Judge Letitia Deere Jackson sentenced the former officer to 20 years to serve 12 years behind bars, with 8 on probation. Department of Corrections records show the authorities on Wednesday, November 6, 2019, booked Olson into the Coastal State Prison in Savannah, where he now serves his sentencing. If you enjoyed this, click on the card currently showing on your screen for other interesting videos.